Welcome to the Astrology of Healing. I'm Willa Kaiser, Vedic astrologer, and today we are going to talk about the planet Jupiter. This is actually the third in a series of webinars that are all about healing. The first one was on the sun, the second one was on the moon, and this is Jupiter. Now, the reason I chose these three planets is because in Vedic astrology, these three are the Sattvic planets. So these are the planets that promote spirituality and harmony and healing. And so they're the most important for those kinds of subjects. First, we're going to do a little bit of a review of the 5 elements because the different planets actually represent different elements in the astrological chart. The earth element has a quality of being heavy, dense, and solid and is represented by the planet Mercury. The water element has fluid, floating qualities and sensations and is represented by both the moon and Venus. Fire, of course, has burning sensations as well as warmth and light and is represented by both the sun and Mars. Air element is associated with thoughts which ride on the karmic winds and with movement and motions, which is why when we meditate, the breath is so important because our thoughts are riding on the breath. And air is represented by the planet Saturn. And finally, the 5th element of space or ether is represented by Jupiter. And of course, the space element represents harmony, sometimes the quality of magnetism, openness, etc. So the elements that are represented in the Sattvic planets are the water element, represented by the moon, as I said earlier, the fire element, represented by sun, and the space element, which is what we're going to be discussing today, which is represented by Jupiter. And you can see here in this little chart, if you know anything about Ayurveda, how the Ayurvedic doshas actually are derived from the 5 elements. So we're going to be discussing the ether element or the space element today. The space element, of course, is the element that has to do with a complete sense of openness where everything is in a state of oneness. The sense that is associated with the space element is hearing, and this is why mantra can be very, very powerful. It is the most subtle of the 5 elements. Gravity and magnetism are also associated with the ether element because there's this idea of the harmonization and bringing everything together. And the sound associated with the ether element is hum or ha, but if we add, as we often do, a consonant to the end, we can say hum, or in more of the tantric traditions, the hum is changed to the NG sound, so hung or hung. The name in Sanskrit, the main name for Jupiter is Guru. So you can see already how wisdom and knowledge are so strongly associated with the planet Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet that has the strongest magnetic field of all the planets. So it has that magnetic quality even as a physical body. It has 13 moons, which is very interesting because the number 13 is associated with victory and success. And Jupiter is certainly the planet of success and good fortune. Jupiter transits one sign every year. And where Jupiter is in your chart at the time of your birth and where Jupiter is in the sky right now in terms of transits are all extremely important. For those who are watching this presentation in 2019, we are extremely fortunate in that Jupiter is just about to enter Sagittarius in on November 4th of 2019, which is just a few weeks away. So we can all be very happy about that. So the three Sattvic planets are the definers of time. The sun defines the day, and the days of the week are actually named after different planets, which we're going to talk about in a little while. The moon, of course, defines the month as she goes around the Earth in the 28 days. And the year is defined by Jupiter because, as I said, Jupiter transits one sign per year. Jupiter is associated with intelligence, with wisdom, with memory. There are different kinds of intelligence. Mercury is also a planet of wit and intelligence, but it's more a lower level of making different kinds of connections, you know, being good at sort of connecting this thing with that thing. But Jupiter is the planet that represents a really all-encompassing kind of wisdom of being able to kind of understand things on a very vast level and to bring them all into harmony. The parts of the body associated with Jupiter are the thighs, which is represented by the sign of Sagittarius, and the feet, which is represented by Pisces. And we are going to talk about the signs that Jupiter rules as well. The day Thursday is Jupiter's day. This is why we're actually recording this presentation on a Thursday, because Thursday is a very excellent day for any kind of deep knowledge or meeting with a teacher, because Thursdays are associated with Jupiter. Easy way to remember that, if you know some French, is that you can go through actually all the days of the week. Sunday is the sun, Monday is the moon. Tuesday you have to switch to French, mardi, which is Mars Day. Wednesday is mercredi in French, which is Mercury Day. And Thursday is jeudi, which is Jupiter's Day. So if you know your days of the week in French and English, between the two of them, you can kind of track which day is good for what. The metal associated with Jupiter is stannum, and the remedy for Jupiter, and Jupiter is the remedy for Rahu, which is the north node of the moon, representing confusion and ignorance. I've discussed Rahu and Ketu, the north and south nodes of the moon, in more detail in some of my other presentations. So Jupiter is considered to be the best planet in Vedic astrology overall, because Jupiter represents wisdom, good fortune, feeling good, that space element that brings everything together, that magnetism. It's the sattva guna, the quality of spiritually refined quality. Has thoughts of betterment of the whole universe. So having, you know, good thoughts and aspirations on a very vast level. So it represents wisdom, but also represents wealth. The color for Jupiter is this lovely yellow gold. And Jupiter brings prosperity as well as spiritual wealth. Jupiter is the definer of the spiritual path. It rules the sign of Sagittarius, which is all about your path. It's the planet that represents this, as I said, this deeper level of intelligence as well, the more encompassing one that can bring everything together rather than more Mercury kind of stuff of breaking it apart and sorting it, etc. Jupiter represents truth. If somebody has a good Jupiter in their chart, they're probably quite intelligent. They may also have a lot of happiness and good fortune. So we are going to be talking in more detail later in the presentation about the signs that Jupiter rules, but Sagittarius is more of the outer guru who's doing the teaching, showing the way, showing the path. And Pisces is more about the oneness, the inner oneness and the inner guru and the non-dual state. The remedy for, the mantra for Jupiter the main mantra in terms of the planet Jupiter is Om Gurave Namah. Om Gurave Namah. Om Gurave Namah. The word jovial comes from Jupiter as well. So there's, like I said, happiness, feeling good. It rules the liver, which is the largest organ of the body. Also has influence on the gallbladder and is connected with sweets and fats, and the pancreas as well. So in terms of dosha, you can see how you could end up a little bit like Santa Claus if you're going through a Jupiter period, enjoying food, and Jupiter is just generally expansive. So for example, I have Jupiter in my 6th house, which is a house of one of the houses of health problems. And when I was in my Jupiter time, my Jupiter period, I just could not stop gaining weight. It was just, I was also in a great time, having a wonderful time, but I just couldn't stop gaining weight. It was just expansive in a sort of not good way because Jupiter's in my 6th house of health problems. So it was causing a little bit of health problems and some other good things as well. There's always both. So diabetes, you have to look at what's going on with Jupiter. If somebody has diabetes, we look at Jupiter since it represents the pancreas and sweets, etc. Sometimes, if anything is a problem with Jupiter, if somebody's Jupiter is really good, things may just come too easy, you know, and then people can end up being a little bit lazy and overindulgent, jovial, expansive, cheerful. I think you're getting the idea here. So Jupiter rules sweets, fruit. Jupiter represents children in our charts because children are like our fruits. Olives are also ruled by Jupiter because they are, you know, nice and buttery and rich, and at the same time they're also fruit. Fats, oils, and lipids are all ruled by Jupiter. So of course the Kapha dosha in the phlegmatic constitution can be found if Jupiter is very strong and, you know, afflicted or in bad houses, etc. So I'm going to talk about a few herbs that are associated with Jupiter, and these are all herbs that I've made into spagyric alchemical preparations. The first one is ashwagandha. Ashwa means horse, and gandha means smell. So it means the smell of a horse. I don't know if it really smells like a horse. I take it every night. I love this herb. But in any case, that is the name of it. It does have a little bit of an acrid taste and flavor, but it's not bad. So this is a really special herb that is mentioned in the Vedas. It gives the strength of a horse and also the ability to dispel dark forces. And you can see here this picture of a horse kind of overcoming a snake. So snakes or serpents or nagas can sometimes, in some cases, there are beneficial nagas too, but in some cases, these serpents and snakes can represent the kind of dark forces, and Jupiter represents this shining knight who can go and dispel these dark forces, especially ashwagandha. So these are just some quotes from the Vedas where it is called Jangita. May Jangita protect me from Bhu, Bhuva, Swaha, which are the 3 realms, the earth, the heaven, and the space. From the plants, from the past and future, all of us in all directions. Let the Jangita, which the gods and holy men have made as an enemy-killing protector, protect us as a treasurer protects the treasures. May this powerful witchcraft-ruining and enemy-ruining Jangita prolong our lives and kill the Rakshakshas, which are a kind of demon. May it make the deceitful sound powerless and the 7 decays powerless. For as an archer, his arrow, O Jangita, dispel evil far away from here. So this is really interesting that it's talking about an archer and an arrow because, of course, Jupiter also rules Sagittarius. The medicine for all diseases, you are a protector. So I actually made the ashwagandha preparation when I first did it when Jupiter was in Sagittarius 12 years ago, because that would be a very, very strong time of Jupiterian energy. So it is a very rejuvenating herb, but unlike ginseng, ashwagandha does not raise blood pressure, and it also helps you to sleep. I actually take it, even though it is a rejuvenative and gives you energy, I take it right before I go to bed because it also helps you sleep. So it's very grounding and centering in a very beautiful way, and good for people with too much vata or lung or air constitution. If it's also really a good medicine for our times, because overwork, too much stress, not getting enough sleep, chronic illness, these are all indications for ashwagandha. It slows the circulation of adrenaline in the bloodstream, strengthens the reproductive system, acts as an aphrodisiac, promotes deep and dreamless sleep, and is very calming and grounding. So you can even take it, one way that it's recommended is to take it in milk. You can, if you don't use dairy milk, you can use some kind of plant milk preparation, and maybe start with about a half a teaspoon of ashwagandha powder in some kind of milk, because the fats and the oils and the proteins that are in those beverages, and even the sugar, help your body to absorb the herb. And that's a belief in the Ayurvedic system, that if it tastes good and it's got some of these good flavors, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about that in a little while, that the body actually takes them in better. So that's a good thing to be able to do. Turmeric, of course, with that gorgeous yellow color, turmeric is also an important Jupiterian herb. And of course, we know how anti-inflammatory it is, how it works with cancer. It's just got so many benefits that it's really, eating some turmeric or taking it as a supplement pretty much every day is a very good idea. And here is lemon balm. And this was actually the person who defined, the alchemist who originally defined plant alchemy, Paracelsus. This was one of his most favorite herbs. He thought it could completely revivify a man. In other words, it was a rejuvenative herb as well, and very good for complaints of a disordered nervous system. It grows wild in so many places, so easy to grow and to enjoy the flavor of. An essence of balm given in canary wine every morning will renew youth, strengthen the brain, relieve languishing nature, and prevent baldness. Balm is the sovereign for the brain, strengthening the memory and powerfully chasing away melancholy. So it's antidepressant. Steeped in wine, it comforts the heart and driveth away melancholy and sadness. So it brings this, we can see why it's associated with Jupiter, is it brings a sense of well-being and happiness, and also really helps with the brain. A little bit more information about it. Nicholas Culpeper was the one who originally talked about it being an herb of Jupiter under the astrological sign of Cancer. And Cancer is actually the sign that Jupiter is exalted in, which we'll be talking about again a little bit in a little while. Opens obstructions of the brain, has so much purging quality in it as to expel those melancholy vapors from the spirits and blood which are in the heart, which are from the spirits and blood which are in the heart and arteries. So it was believed to, similar to ashwagandha, really dispel the gloomy, dark energies. So again, those qualities of Jupiter. A food that's a Jupiterian food is garbanzo beans. They are they call it a grain, but of course it's not a grain, it's a legume. They are the legume that is associated with Jupiter, and of course garbanzo beans are nice and fat and jolly. They're also a wonderful food because they are the lowest glycemic index of all of the legumes. So These days, a lot of diabetics are finding out about garbanzo beans, specifically a small type of garbanzo bean called chana dal. That one specifically is very low glycemic index, much lower than other beans, which can be quite high and not good, therefore, for diabetics because they raise the blood sugar too much. So I'm just going to do a little review of the gunas at this point. I mentioned earlier that that Jupiter is a sattva guna planet and that the other two are sun and moon. Rajas guna is this overactive, hyperactive, too much energy. That's the quality of rajas. So when something's rajasic, it means it's just a little bit too over the top. And of course, our whole culture is that way, especially in the US and especially in places like Silicon Valley or New York City, where people are just rushed and hurried and trying too hard and working too hard and overwork, overstress, overambitious, overachieving. That's all rajas. Whereas tamas is the opposite. Tamas is lethargic, slow, sleepy. Can be related to actually fear and terror because it's kind of associated with darkness, just as rajas is associated with too intense and too bright. Tamas is like too dark and too slow and too dull. And sattva is that balance quality, which is not too bright, not too dark, but just kind of in a state of balance and harmony. So this is an example. I'm going to talk a little bit about food now. This is an example of a sattvic medicine and how you can see how these different 3 sattvic planets are actually all represented in this one drink, golden milk. First of all, the milk is associated with moon, as we've discussed in the moon presentation. Turmeric is, as we just talked about, is Jupiter. And then pepper, which is often added to golden milk to bring out the qualities of the turmeric to make it more absorbable, is associated with the sun because it's hot and spicy. And any kind of sweetener you might put in, such as honey or even stevia, are associated with Jupiter. So this is an example of a very sattvic drink, which has all of the planetary energies associated with it. It promotes rest and builds ojas, which is kind of like the life, the juicy life force of the body. So there are different ways to do this, of course. Traditionally, you would use real dairy milk. But these days people are using other kinds of milks, such as almond milk. I would encourage using a milk that has a good fat content, like coconut milk or almond milk, something like that. So sattvic eating, you can do a lot with diet because, of course, what we eat has a big influence on how we feel. And so really in Ayurvedic tradition, the sattvic foods have been stressed or been emphasized is a better word, because they really promote a calm, steady mind. They are soothing and nourishing. They clear the energy channels. And how you prepare the foods is also really important. If the foods are prepared with mindfulness, with love, with a sense of service, then the food is infused with those energies as well. So this is traditional Ayurvedic teaching, and people who want to really prepare a healing environment, often preparing food is a good way to do it. So some foods that are very sattvic are fresh vegetables, legumes, and grains. Dairy is considered to be a good thing in Ayurvedic eating because the cow, of course, is sacred, and so milk is sacred, and ghee, of course, is the distillation. Now, these days, people have all kinds of reasons for avoiding dairy products, which are very legitimate, especially if you don't have access to a real cow on a farm up here in Mount Shasta. I actually do. I'm part of a cow share, and for a while I was even milking the cows, and they're very happy and well taken care of and eating grass and all that stuff. But if you don't have access to that, or you have other problems, a lot of the problems that people have with dairy are actually connected with factory farming. So raw pastured milk and dairy products can be very different effect on your body. Also A2 milk, which is a kind of protein that works better for most people, can help with people with dairy allergies. Now, some of the tamasic foods, so foods that bring you more into that dark place, include meat, eggs, garlic, and onion. Old food is also tamasic. In Ayurvedic eating, you're really supposed to eat things very soon after you prepare them. It's good if the food has all 6 tastes, and we'll get to the tastes in just a minute, but the most sattvic taste is sweet. So sweets are really emphasized. These are the different flavors. Sweet is connected with love, compassion, bliss, the most sattvic of flavors. And, you know, if you've ever had Indian sweets and how sweet they are and how blissful it can be to eat them, you can have a sense of that. So sweet is considered to be the most important taste. Sour brings discrimination, criticism, understanding, and hyperactivity. Salty can bring courage, enthusiasm, but also irritability. Pungent foods can bring excitement and vitality, but also aggressiveness. Astringent foods can make you feel stable and grounded, but can also bring anxiety. And bitter foods bring clarity, introspection, and detachment, but can also cause loneliness. So those are considered to be the traditional flavors and the effect that they have. And then this little chart here shows what the different flavors do. For example, sweet, which is a mix of earth and water, decreases vata, which is wind, decreases pitta, which is fire, but increases kapha, which is phlegm. So one food that's really nice to make at home is khichdi. This is a little picture from Banyan Botanicals of the different ingredients, which are basically some kind of legume, in this case mung dal, which are split mung beans, and then a grain, which in this case traditionally is basmati rice, and then ghee, and then the spice mix, which is I'll in the next slide I'll be showing you my recipe for the spice mix, but turmeric is a big element of it. And what you can do is you can actually buy these packages right from Banyan Botanicals, especially the spice mix if you want to try their khichdi mix. But what you do is you just warm up the ghee, add the spices, and then if you're doing it in an Instapot, which is how I do it, then I add the dal and the rice and the water, and then cook it all together. It only takes about, if you're using mung dal, it only takes about 8 or 10 minutes. I had the good fortune a number of years ago to go to a place called Jagannath Puri, which is in Orissa, which is also where the Nyingma branch of Vajrayana Buddhism went when they left Tibet. So it's a very interesting area. It's the center for where my astrological lineage is. And every day they make a prasad, they make a feast for thousands of people. And even actually Westerners are not allowed in this temple. So I wasn't allowed to go in the temple, but I did eat the prasad every day, the holy blessed food every day. And it was the most exquisite food I have ever tasted. The flavors were so subtle and sattvic and wonderful. So this is just a picture of some of the dishes. It's just kind of endlessly wonderful vegetarian sattvic food. I did find a cookbook that is very similar to how the food was in Puri, in Jagannath Puri. It's called Lord Krishna's Cuisine, and it was written by an American woman. Yamuna Devi is an American woman. She's somebody who met Srila Prabhupada, who was the head of the Hare Krishna movement, who was also an excellent cook, and she became his disciple and also learned how to cook from him. He would actually go in the kitchen and do a lot of the cooking and then show her how to do it. And so this sattvic way of cooking without any garlic or onions, and not tons of chili either. It's much more of the sattvic spices such as cinnamon and cardamom and ginger and turmeric, those kind of softer, more sattvic spices. So here's my khichdi recipe. I can't really tell you amounts because I just kind of do it by feel, but we could say, I'll just say, let's say 2 tablespoons of turmeric, tablespoon of mustard seed, a tablespoon of fennel seed, a tablespoon of fenugreek, tablespoon of cumin, and then probably a little bit less coriander powder, and then ginger powder, probably 1 or 2 tablespoons, some cardamom, again about equal amount, maybe a tablespoon. So turmeric, more than the other factors, and also ginger. Some ground pepper, not as much. And then a real key is hing, which is asafoetida. It has that pungent, we were talking about the balance of the flavors. It has that pungency similar to garlic or onions, but it doesn't make me feel the way garlic and onions can. It's actually really good for digestion and creates such a nice balance when you add it to all these very sweet kinds of spices like ginger and fennel and cardamom. And then when you have this hing, this asafoetida, you can buy it in a powder on Amazon. They even have organic kinds now, I've noticed on Amazon, but also in any Indian market. And then I can't handle all the carbs, so instead of doing a traditional kind of mix, which would be like 2 parts basmati rice to 1 part mung dal, I do 1/3 of mung dal, 1/3 of quinoa, and 1/3 of basmati rice. And the basmati rice, even though it's white rice, it gives such an incredible texture and fragrance that I feel like it's kind of essential, even though, as we know, nutritionally it's not so good, and it also, in terms of glycemic index, it's not good either. And then ghee, and then some veggies. And so basically, you put in any kind of veggies that you want. And as I mentioned before, what you can do is warm up the ghee, put the spices in there, and when it starts to bubble, add grains and dal, and then kind of mix them up with the spices and the ghee, and then add water. And if you're doing this in an Instapot and you're using mung dal, you'd be done in like 8 or 10 minutes. If you're using other kinds of dal, especially like chana dal, which is made from chickpeas, it can take up to an hour, even in an Instapot. And then, of course, you can also do it stovetop. Normally with stovetop, you would just boil the grains and the dal together. And then at the end, or toward the end, you would take a separate frying pan or something, warm up the ghee, add the spices, warm up the spices in the ghee, and then pour the whole thing into the pot. So that's the way to make it without an Instapot. I'm just so used to my Instapot at this time because it makes it easy, but certainly the traditional way is something else for you to know if you don't have an Instapot. The gemstone associated with Jupiter is the yellow sapphire. Citrine and topaz are also considered to be acceptable substitutions. And Vedic gems can be prescribed by an astrologer if Jupiter needs to be strengthened. There is a protocol of putting the gemstone on at a certain day on a certain finger with a certain mantra, etc. So that can come up if you have an astrological reading done. These are the houses that that Jupiter is associated with, and this is actually a Vedic astrological chart in the East Indian tradition. When you can see, it kind of looks like the rays of a sun with the center here and then the rays coming out. So Jupiter is rules, as I said, the sign of Pisces, which represents the feet. And this is the home of Jupiter. Jupiter's home is in Pisces. So that's where Jupiter feels, it's like when Jupiter's at home, just relax. It's like the guru goes home and he's by himself. Maybe he's on retreat and he's really comfortable, and all he is there with the vastness of his own mind and his own compassion. And so it's a very relaxed, expansive sign. Jupiter's office is Sagittarius, and that's when Jupiter's at work and he's making laws, he's leading people, he's giving classes, he's bringing them together, you know, in a much more formal way, giving lectures at a university, teaching law, etc. And then Jupiter is exalted over here in the sign of Cancer, which is about the heart and love and mother and nurturing. And that's where Jupiter feels really nurtured and loved. And Jupiter is also debilitated in the sign of Capricorn, right across the way from Cancer, because Capricorn kind of represents corporations and businesses, and kind of like, you know, Jupiter in Capricorn is kind of like a baby being raised in an orphanage, you know, somebody who's soft and tender being in some kind of very harsh environment, business-like harsh environment. So we'll talk a little bit more about Sagittarius. Sagittarius sign is half man, half horse, rules the thighs, as we talked about. It's a fire sign. It represents the warrior class or the Kshatriya class, represents tall places, has the ability of the horse to fight snakes. Anti-venom is actually made from horse blood. So there is this connection of horses being able to fight snakes. So as a rising sign, or if you have Sagittarius prominent in your chart, it can bring philosophical nature, sympathetic, very enthusiastic, sometimes overly enthusiastic, kind of fiery, law, impulsive, honorable, cheerful, good at sports, religious, can be brusque and fiery at times. And actually the adjoining sign is Scorpio. And the arrow of the Sagittarius archer is actually aiming at the tail of the scorpion. So this is a very interesting connection between these two signs. And actually in a presentation that I'm going to do on the upcoming transits, I'm going to be talking about that very interesting area where Sagittarius meets Scorpio, because a lot is happening right there at this moment. And the mantra for Sagittarius is Om Dhanusaya Namah. Om Dhanusaya Namah. Om Dhanusaya Namah. Dhanus is the Sanskrit name for Sagittarius. So just here's another drawing about Sagittarius. The archer points his arrow, and he's actually pointing the arrow at just not only the heart of the scorpion, but the galactic center. That's what this is representing here. And he inspires others in their search for divinity because of his directiveness and his fire and his energy. It's a very energetic sign. Now here's Pisces, which is represented by two fish swimming in opposite directions. It rules the feet. It's a sattvic water sign. It rules oceans, watery places, places where saints reside. It represents places of retreat, far away places, places that are just very distant and remote. It's connected with the priestly caste. If you have planets in Pisces, you might have the qualities of being intuitive, sensitive, sweet, changeable, imaginative, good-natured, flexible, represents ashrams, healing, places of healing and hospitals, teacher of the devas, or having a close informal connection with a guru. And the mantra is Om Minaya Namah, Om Minaya Namah, Om Minaya Namah. So again, here's another picture associated with Pisces, the two fish swimming upstream and downstream. So, sometimes Pisces people can be a little bit, have trouble, a little bit wavering, hard to make decisions, because they are kind of in this vast non-dual expanse. And then to have this dualistic thing of, oh, are you going to do that or are you going to do that, can be a little bit confusing for Pisces. Another name for Jupiter is Brihaspati. Brihaspati was the teacher of the gods, and is again associated with speech, hearing, teaching, and mantra, all qualities of Jupiter. So I wanted to talk a little bit about gurus in different traditions. And this is a picture right here of Naropa and Tilopa. So first, we have the one who is holding the skull cup here. He's doing a couple of things. There's a fish down here, and then there's a sandal here where he's hitting Naropa. So I'll tell you a brief version of this story. So Naropa was actually a very famous professor and philosopher, and he was not a Buddhist at the time. But he was a Pandit in some kind of Hindu branch of Hinduism. And at one point, he went to the house of a woman who sold beer and met a Buddhist Pandit. And after the Buddhist Pandit left, he read a book that was there, and he became really inspired and wanted to find out more. So he went to a monastery and got ordained as a Buddhist monk, and became a very learned Pandita in the Buddhist tradition, and had all kinds of honors bestowed upon him, became very famous. And then at that point, he actually had a vision of a Dakini, of a female deity. And the Dakini told him, you have to go and meet Tilopa, he's your guru. So go to the east and meet Tilopa. So he went and looked everywhere for Tilopa and was having trouble finding him. And when he finally found him, he was sitting there eating fish. And this was actually in a monastery, and the monks were all trying to stop him from eating fish. And he said, if you don't like it, just throw these roasted fish leftovers into the water. And when they were thrown into the water, he was able to snap his fingers, and they all came to life again. So they realized that that Tilopa was a very great, what we call Mahasiddha, a very great master. And so Naropa started prostrating to him and begging him to teach him. And what happened after that was one of these very typical, in many traditions, these different kinds of trials that he was put through by Tilopa, which are all a kind of karmic purification. But they were very hard. And he would do things like send him to go steal things. And then when he did it, he would get beaten by the people that he stole from. One time a princess was sitting there, and he said, grab the princess and bring her here. And of course, he got beaten for that. So this went on and on. There were actually 12 difficult tasks that he was put through. And then finally, the famous sandal transmission was when he basically told him, okay, I'm ready to give you the instructions finally. And what he actually did was he took his sandal and smacked him in the face. And with that, that was it. That's when Naropa got the realization of Tilopa, and they became equal, and he was able to transfer his realization. So this was, of course, how do you go through all those kinds of terrible tasks? You obviously have to have some kind of devotion or belief that this person is not just crazy and making you do crazy things, but that there's a reason for it beyond normal worldly reasons. And that was why it worked. And indeed, what they call pith instructions, or the most important instructions often in the relationship between a guru and a student, are actually when the teacher is pointing out your faults. It's the thing you don't want to hear, but the thing you want to hear about the thing that you need to hear. And so pointing out your faults and basically making making you a little aggravated in a lot of ways is often what happens. And in the Zen tradition, they have these same kind of stories of, being sent to pour water into the well and that kind of thing. So it's not confined to just Vajrayana Buddhism, but this is a very classic story, well-known story in the Vajrayana Buddhist tradition. So this is a beautiful teaching on meditation by Tilopa, the teacher of Naropa. And this is a very nice translation by Ken MacLeod. Don't recall, let go of what has passed. Don't imagine, let go of what may come. Don't think, let go of what is happening now. Don't control, don't examine, don't try to figure anything out. Don't control, don't try to make anything happen. Relax, rest, relax right now and rest. So that's a very simple yet profound meditation instruction, and I have it on my refrigerator actually, and try to remember it as much as I can. And it's the simplest thing, and yet sometimes the most difficult thing to do, to just slow down and be right in the moment in that way. So this is a quote. We were talking about devotion. This is a quote from Dzongtsar Khyentse Rinpoche in his book, The Guru Drinks Bourbon, about what real devotion is. We talked about how Naropa needed such intense devotion to get through these years and years of what could be considered terrible abuse by a crazy person, but he did it. But this is more on the level of ultimate devotion. Dzongtsar Khyentse Rinpoche says, it may sound as if you must have devotion in order to have an understanding of the view that devotion ignites the practice of the Dharma. But as you become more seasoned in practicing the Dharma, especially the Vajrayana, the gap between devotion and the goal of devotion becomes very small. As you become more skilled in practicing, you will see that devotion is the awareness of impermanence. Devotion is the renunciation mind. Devotion is the compassion for all sentient beings. Devotion is none other than the experience of dependent arising. Most important, the moment there is devotion, you have the view, and there is awareness of shunyata, which is emptiness. Speaking of guru, there's also this practice which was represented by the meeting of the minds of Naropa and Tilopa called Guru Yoga. The word yoga means union. So this is union with the guru, and this is really the meeting of the minds, or the mixing of the minds of the teacher and the student. And there's, of course, the outer guru, who's a person who's leading you in this way and maybe putting you through these trials. But there's also that outer guru connecting you to the inner guru, so that you recognize your own divine nature and receive the blessing of inspiration and spiritual wisdom from the teacher. So this is actually a picture of Guru Padmasambhava sending these lights to the disciples from his 3 chakras here. So the main guru in the Vajrayana tradition is Guru Rinpoche, who was considered to be the second Buddha. He was an 8th century yogi from the Indian subcontinent who brought Buddhism to Tibet. And he was also very powerful and was able to tame the Tibetan spirits to support the Dharma, which is why he was brought there. He had hid many religious treasures in lakes, caves, fields, and forests that were found later and interpreted by future treasure finders to this day. This is still happening. And some of these treasures are specifically geared to our times here. So this is the Vajraguru mantra. In Vedic astrology, we do teach mantras, and this is a mantra from the Vajrayana tradition, but it has all the Sanskrit. It's a Sanskrit mantra. So the mantra is Om Ah Hum Vajra Guru Pema Siddhi Hum. The word Om is associated with the enlightened body and the third eye chakra here. The seed syllable Ah represents enlightened speech and is associated with the throat chakra. And the seed syllable Hum is associated with the enlightened mind and the heart chakra. Vajra means indestructible or thunderbolt. Guru is Padmasambhava, the Vajra Guru, who we were just speaking of. Padma or Pema is lotus. Siddhi means accomplishment. And then Hum is the seed syllable associated, as we now know, with the space element. So I'm going to sing the mantra 3 times, and you're welcome to join me. Om Ahum Vajra Guru Padma Siddhi Hum. Om Ahum Vajra Guru Padma Siddhi Hum. Om Ahum Vajra Guru Padma Siddhi Hum. So this is a very powerful mantra for connecting with one's inner guru and with outer gurus. Very beautiful mantra, very important mantra in our times, and can help a lot to bring the very beneficial, spiritual, refined energy of Jupiter and the guru into the kinds of situations that we're finding these days. So the more people that can chant the Vajraguru mantra with some sense of devotion and compassion and good intention to help others, the better. So I mentioned I would tell you a little bit about the days as sort of a final topic here. So this is a way that you can use the days of the week to plan when to do things. The days are ruled by the sun, as we talked about. They are associated with Agni, the element of fire, and sight. It has a big influence on our energy and our health. And depending on which day you were born, the planet that rules that day has a big say about your health. So when we're doing charts for health, we will often be looking at the ruler, planetary ruler of the day that you were born. So this is just the last thing here is just tells you what the word Vara, which means day, comes from the words Vasa in Sanskrit, to live or stay, or Ra, and Ra, which is Agni, or fire. So these are the days that, these are the planets that rule the days that I spoke of earlier. The days ruled by natural benefics are auspicious, so that would be like Jupiter and Moon and Venus. The days ruled by natural malefics, which are planets that kind of bring more of our suffering, are inauspicious. The Vedic day starts at sunrise, so that's when the day begins. So if it was like before sunrise on a Thursday, it would still be Wednesday from Vedic point of view. So Sundays, starting at sunrise, are ruled by the sun. It's good for spiritual activities, solitary activities. So, the fact that church was traditionally on a Sunday in the Christian tradition makes some sense, because it is a day for spirituality and doing things on your own. Monday is associated with the mother, devotion, social contact, healing. My homeopathy clinic, I put it on Mondays because I have an online teaching clinic, and it's all women who are my interns, and we see a lot of women, not all women, but anyway, Monday's a good day for healing. So it's a good day for women to get together with women and do healing activities. Tuesday is a day of competition, aggression, and wars. In fact, in India, barbershops and beauty salons are not open on Tuesdays because Mars also rules accidents and sharp instruments. So people are afraid that they might get hurt with something sharp. So traditionally, you can't get a haircut on a Tuesday in India. Wednesday is ruled by Buddha, which is Mercury. So it's a great day for business contacts, communications, writing emails, things like that. Thursday, as I have mentioned, is ruled by Jupiter, Brihaspati, spiritual learning, legal matters, if you have to go to court, and you are right, and you want justice to be done, try to get to go on a Thursday if you have a choice. But in general, it's a great day for studying as well. I usually try to do astrology stuff on either Sunday or Thursday in terms of teachings, things like that. Friday is date night, right? Friday is ruled by Venus, so it's a great day for entertainment, romance, beauty, enjoying good food, that kind of thing. The tradition of in Judaism of Friday night Shabbat, and the couple makes love and they enjoy a nice dinner and all that kind of thing. That's very Friday-ish. Saturday is a day of service, discipline, and work. Saturday and Tuesday are probably the worst days in terms of auspiciousness, because Tuesday is ruled by Mars, which is a malefic planet, and Saturday is ruled by Saturn, which is a malefic planet. And the first hour right after sunrise is always ruled by that planet. So there are planetary hours that you can figure out. But if you want a really strong energy of a certain day, like if you really want the Jupiterian energy to set intentions or something like that, get up at sunrise and do your prayers on a Thursday at sunrise as the sun is rising, and you will catch the good energy then. So this is the end of the presentation. Basically, I teach Vedic astrology in the Vitalism program. You can find more information about it at vitalism.us. And I also do private readings for people. And you can learn more about that on my reading website, astrohealing.us.